Badass of the Week is produced by High Five Content and 7 Bucks Productions. February 1953. The skies above North Korea. 2 Grumman F-9F Panther jets, Marine Fighter Squadron 311, cut low over the frozen landscape. Their mission? Ground attack. In the lead jet, Major John Glenn. In the wing slot, Captain Ted Williams, age 34, just months removed from being the greatest hitter in Major League Baseball. They dive hard, release their payloads, dropping rockets and bombs onto the North Korean base below. The moment they pull up, the ground spits fire back, a dense, concentrated storm of anti-aircraft fire. Bang! Williams's F-9F Panther shudders violently. The stick goes sluggish. The radio's dead. Inside the cockpit, acrid smoke instantly fills the cabin. Williams looks back, his tail trailing a furious ribbon of fire. He was hit, deep behind enemy lines. His wingman, John Glenn, pulls his jet alongside the wounded Panther, flying wingtip to wingtip. Glenn points a thumb emphatically up. Eject. Bail out. The plane is on fire. Eject? No, thinks the 2-time Major League Baseball MVP. I can get this back to friendly lines. I can land this. Captain Williams ignores him. He points the smoking, crippled jet towards the nearest friendly airfield, preparing to attempt the most desperate act of his life. A terrifying, high-speed belly landing, betting his survival and his legacy on one final act of masterful control. Hello, and welcome back to Badass of the Week, the show where we tell the badass history of badasses. My name is Ben Thompson, and I am joined today by a special guest. Please welcome Indy Neidell. He is a writer, YouTuber. You worked on TimeGhost. You wrote Sabaton History, which I love. Indy, thank you so much for being on the show. We're really happy to have you here.
I'm happy to be here. And I'm impressed that, I don't know if I should be saying, I'm impressed that you're recording this on a Sunday morning, your time, which is great to get you out of bed to do this. Because I happen to be in Sweden, everybody, is where I live. And that's where we produce all of our documentary series in Germany. I am a historian and a writer, an actor, and a musician. But other than Sabaton History, it's World War II in real time, the Korean War in real time, and the Great War.
Right.
Where the Great War is where it really started. That we got famous on YouTube and became YouTube stars. So I guess I probably should have started today by saying, "Hey guys, what's up? Hey guys, how you doing?
Don't forget to like and subscribe."
Oh yeah, don't forget. I've never ever said don't forget to like and subscribe, and I've never said and ring that bell either. Never once.
Oh yeah, no, we don't have the bell for podcasts. I do have to do the call to action at the end of the episodes, though.
Oh yeah, sure.
Like, we're still small enough that that's important.
Well, it's true. And I do like to get creative with the calls to action, but I can proudly claim that at the age of 58, I'm 3 times as old as most YouTube stars these days. So that's pretty cool.
Shoot, I guess I am. Probably am too then.
The YouTube thing came along at a really interesting point, since I was already pretty well known as an actor and voiceover guy and stuff. And suddenly you had, especially with Sabaton History, you suddenly had a medium where you could do more immediate history. And to anybody out there that I'm assuming most of y'all have not seen the stuff that we do. I don't do like when we did World War II in real time. It's not just a documentary about follow this battle or this guy or something. It followed the war week by week in real time from beginning to end. So one week is, say, July 17th, 1942. And I'm talking about those last 7 days of the war on all fronts. So a lot of weeks, I'm maybe only talking about Burma because that's the only place things happen. So you really get a sense of how it holds together and how it unfolded. And I've maintained that, you could read 100 books about the Battle of Stalingrad, but if you don't understand how it relates to, say, Guadalcanal or Operation Torch, and how the resources and work and, all together, then you don't understand the Battle of Stalingrad, because you have to see the history doesn't happen in a vacuum. And I know I'm babbling, sorry, but I wanted to at least explain the kind of history that we actually do. It's chronology based instead of battle based or person based or nation based, which was
right. It's kind of the headlines for what would have been on the newspaper, like at that time, which is what the way news is being,
Well, I also don't know what's going to happen next week. So if I'm in July, I mean, I didn't know who was going to win until the end happened. I couldn't see the future, and it looked like I'm in the middle now of doing the Korean War with Indy Neidell. So we're in October 1951, and the set, it looks like I'm in October 1951, and same with the Great War, World War II. It looked like a period. So, well, that obviously took off, and that worked out great, and that's why you guys got hold of me.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And we are going to be talking a little Korean War today. Yeah. We're talking baseball because the World Series, as of the time of this recording, the World Series is going on. You said you were up late in Sweden the other day watching. Well,
we were, to everybody out there, we were actually going to record this yesterday, my time, 5 o'clock, I think 5 p.m. my time in Sweden, which is a lot earlier for him. But game one of the World Series started at 2 a.m. Swedish time, and I was definitely going to stay up. And I thought I wouldn't be at my best yesterday afternoon after staying up. And I didn't go to bed until 6 a.m., so it's probably a good thing. So the series is tied 1-1 now, and it's moving to L.A.
Yeah. And so for me yesterday, I live in Seattle. I'm a big Seattle Mariners fan. And so I've been drinking since last week. So I wasn't ready to record yesterday either.
Well, there you go. And, I grew up in Houston, so I'm an Astros fan, and everybody hates the Astros. But this was the first year, it's 2016, that I didn't have postseason games to watch. So I had to adopt you guys, being in the same division at least. So
AL West solidarity.
No offense to any Dodgers fans out there, but I'm not rooting for you.
We are going to talk baseball today. And, I know there are probably some Badass of the Week regulars who are like, oh no, are these guys really going to talk about baseball for an hour? Sort of, because the guy we're talking about today is Ted Williams, who was not only the greatest hitter of his generation, possibly the greatest hitter ever, most likely the greatest hitter ever.
It's good, strong case.
Yes. But he's also a fighter pilot, war hero from the Korean War, and John Glenn's wingman. So we're going to talk about a bunch of really cool stuff. We're going to take a break right now to do some ads. And when we come back, we're going to get into the story of Ted Williams, which is going to lead in some very interesting directions. So even if you're not a huge baseball fan, please stick with us.
But we'll try to explain things to make them understandable or interesting to people that have no idea or no care about baseball.
Yes, exactly. All right. Yes. So, okay, stick with us. Hello and welcome back to Badass of the Week. I am here with Indy Neidell, and Indy, in addition to your day-by-day wars programming through TimeGhost, you also have a baseball podcast.
Yeah, and I probably should have mentioned that near the beginning. It's called Indy Neidell's Baseball History Time Machine. I wanted it to be just the time machine or something, but things like that already exist, so I had to have that rather unwieldy name. You can find it on any podcast, like Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube. It is very nerdy, and while it is stat heavy, a lot of people that I know, particularly here in Sweden, who don't really know baseball stats and stuff, enjoy it very much because there's a lot of color. There's a lot of funny stories and sidetracks. Like, for example, the last 5 episodes are all sluggers of the 1940s, part 1 through 5. It was supposed to be a 1-part episode, but Burns, the guy that I do it with, who's from South Africa, who's a baseball fan, kept asking me so many questions, and I kept sidetracking it and telling you that part 1 became 2 parts, and now it's 5 parts, but that is the last part. Part 5 is the last part. But part 4 and part 5, both Burns and I agree are actually the best episodes so far. There's only 20 episodes out now. And Burns' father, who's never watched game of baseball. He follows the podcast. He goes, yes, these are the best because I can really understand. I tell from the stories that they're very nice people. So yeah.
Yeah, but we have a tendency to get distracted sometimes as well on this show, I feel like.
I like the sidetracks are awesome. The sidetracks, that's what makes life. So
Yes, I'm with you, but my producer sometimes is like, I can see him in the chat, like we just move it along, man, get back to back on.
Okay, am I going to see him in the chat today?
No, not today. No, he doesn't wake up this early. It's 8:00 on a Sunday.
It's Sunday.
Okay. So let's talk Ted Williams.
Teddy Ball Game.
Okay, so Ted Williams is he's born in San Diego. Grows up in San Diego. And he comes on to the baseball scene in a way that you don't usually see rookie hitters enter baseball.
I mean, the way he exploded and stuff.
Yes, exactly.
Sure. Ted, yeah, well, he in the minor leagues, he was playing with the San Diego Padres, who any American will know it's a major league team now. But the San Diego Padres are named after the Pacific Coast League team. And the Pacific Coast League was in some ways the equal of Major League Ball in the 20s and the 30s. I mean, there were a lot of players who played out there who were asked to come and play for the Yankees or the Red Sox and stuff like that, but who refused because they were making just as much money playing out west, and they didn't want to leave their homes. But when he was a teenager, he broke in with the Padres in 1936, 1937, and played well enough the latter year that the Boston Red Sox signed the still teenage Ted Williams. Now, you mentioned where he was from. I'd like to say a couple of words about his family and his background, because that would come to influence some things later on in his life. His father was a former cavalryman who became a professional photographer. And his parents were Sam and May Williams. But May was Hispanic. She was May Bensor. She was from El Paso, right? So technically, since his mother was Hispanic, Ted Williams was the first Latino or part Latino to enter the Hall of Fame. And he wrote in his autobiography, which was called My Turn at Bat, published in, I think, 1969, but don't hold me to that, of his Mexican-American mother. And this is a quote that I pulled out here to run. If I had my mother's name, there's no doubt I would have run into problems in those days, the prejudices people had in Southern California. And this makes sense. Remember, baseball was not integrated, or it didn't begin being integrated in the 20th century till 1947. There were Hispanic players, that being particularly Cuban players, like there were Cuban stars like Luque, but they were more the exception than the rule. It was still, It was very, he, and definitely playing in Southern California, he would have had issues. But this stayed with him for the rest of his career and beyond. And when he was inducted into the Baseball Hall of Fame in the summer of 1966, he wrote his speech out by hand the night before, and the Hall of Fame as the original one, and he thanked people and stuff. But the core of his speech is just a plea that the Hall of Fame recognize the Negro Leagues ball players who had not been allowed to play in the segregated major leagues before 1947. And you might think, anybody who's not American might think, Negro Leagues, that's a strange expression to use. That's what they are officially called still today. The Negro League Baseball, guys like Josh Gibson, Cool Papa Bell, Oscar Charleston, guys that never were able to play in the white major leagues, who even according to, Babe Ruth, Slugger, were as good as those guys. So I think it's pretty badass that he devoted his entire Hall of Fame speech to that. And I think
at this time, there were, black athletes were not allowed to play Major League Baseball. Jackie Robinson kind of does something about that in the later, during Ted Williams' career. But when he's coming up in 1939 as his rookie season, it's white players only.
It was white major leagues. And the first African-American in the American League, or the second overall, was Larry Doby. And he said that Williams went out of his way to make him feel welcome, not like grandstanding, but just being cool. Now, Williams' own team, the Boston Red Sox, who he played for his entire career from 1939 to 1960, they were the last major league team to actually integrate. Yeah. And Pumpsie Green was their first African-American who joined the team in 1959. And of course, Pumpsie became immediately Ted Williams' throwing partner before games. So So while Williams didn't advertise that he was of Hispanic descent, I can see that definitely must have meant something to him. But okay,
Absolutely.
that's his background. But he's with the Padres. He plays well. He gets signed by the Red Sox, and in AAA minor league ball in Minneapolis in 1938, he wins a Triple Crown. Now, the three categories that you have to lead your league in to win a Triple Crown is batting average, home runs, and runs batted in. Home runs, everybody's heard of. That's when you make it all the way around, when you hit the ball. Runs batted in, that seems pretty obvious on the surface of it. You hit the ball and other people score, including yourself. The batting average, that's just the amount of times you get a hit compared to how many at-bats you have. Like if you get you're up 100 times and you get 30 hits, you have a 300 batting average. We do it to the third decimal, right?
Right, but it's a percentage of the number of times you get a hit.
Yeah.
And for references, we're kind of going to be going through here. Like if you hit, 200, we'll say 200, but like that means you're getting a hit like 20% of the time. That's like you're kind of hanging around in the major leagues too.
Yeah, you're probably not a regular. If you are, your team's not very good.
Right, yeah. 250 is about average-ish. 300 is like all-star level. And when we're getting to talk about Ted Williams, we're going to be talking numbers like 400, which are
numbers that just
obscene.
Yeah.
Just don't exist anymore or never have.
When you think about batting average, just think of it this way. If let's say you have a 333 lifetime batting average. So 1 out of every 3 times during your career, you got a hit. You are one of the 20 best hitters who has ever lived. And this is going back to the 1870s. The National League, National League and American League are the two American major leagues now. The National League was founded in 1876, and it is the world's oldest sporting league. I know plenty of people think baseball is a newer sport or a modern sport, but it is the world's oldest professional sporting league. And going back then, in both of these leagues, American League began play in 1901. If you can get a hit 1 out of every 3 times, you're one of the best guys who's ever played. So and if you get a hit 1 out of every 5 times, you'll probably be sent down to the minor league. So it's really a game of inches. So 1939, Williams comes up with the Red Sox, and their big star was Jimmy Fox.
Right.
Jimmy Fox, he won a Triple Crown of his own. He once hit 58 home runs in a season, which at the time was only 2 fewer than what was Babe Ruth's record. He was nicknamed either Muscles or the Beast or Double X. And the quotes about him were, even his muscles have muscles. And anybody listening to this, if you're on your computer, you can pause this for a sec and look up a picture of Jimmy Fox. And he spelled it Jimmie and Fox with 2 X's. Just look up images and look at the size of his arms. And this was the 1930s. There's no steroids and stuff. He was just a farm boy from Maryland. So when Williams came up in 1939, because Williams had that badass attitude, people were like, oh man, wait till you see Jimmy Fox hit. And Ted's like, well, wait till Jimmy Fox sees me hit. And
yes,
yeah, well, that's the way it works because Williams, he hit straight out of the gate. He was
confident about it. That was it. Like that's the Ted Williams attitude that he takes into everything that he does in his life. Is like
everything.
Like I'm gonna be the best. Watch it. Like just get out
his
of my
rookie
way.
RBI total was 145, which is still RBI is runs batted in again, which is still no rookie has ever driven in more runs than Ted Williams did in his rookie year in 1939.
No, he's coming in he's 20 years old, right? He's playing against he's playing against pitchers with a lot of major league experience. And yeah, we said 300 is kind of all-star level hitting. He hits 327 with 31 home runs his rookie season, which is just like unbelievable that's great stats for a veteran in his prime, right? Like a perennial all-star would hit something like that.
Somebody hit 327 with 145 RBIs today. That's MVP level. That's
MVP, yeah.
MVP. But that was just getting started. His next year, in 1940, he led the league in on-base percentage for the first time. And that's what I was saying before. I was talking to you before about this. On-base percentage is, because there's several ways you can get to first base. For those of you who don't follow baseball, you can get a hit. You get hit by a pitch, in which case you get a free base, or you can get a walk. A walk is, everybody knows 3 strikes and you're out, right? Well, if the pitcher throws four pitches outside of the strike zone, you get a free base. That's called a walk. 4 balls to a walk. And Ted Williams had an incredible batting eye. His career on base percentage is .482. First time he led the league in it was 1940. He led the league, I believe, 12 times in his career. 12 times in on base percentage. .482 means he got on base every time he came up to bat. 48.2% of the time he ended up on base. By comparison, that's not just the highest career mark of all time. By comparison, looking at the last times anyone did it for a single season, in the Corona year in 2020, when we only played like 30 games, and there's 162 games normally in a season, Juan Soto did it. Going back before that, Barry Bonds, the poster child for steroids, did it 3 years in a row. Frank Thomas did it in 1994 during the strike season. But in a full season, other than Barry Bonds before that, you have to go back to Mickey Mantle in 1962 and Norm Cash in 1961 to find anyone who did it for a single season.
Yeah.
And that's his career, playing 19 seasons between 1939 and 1960 and retiring when he was 41 years old. So he had 9 seasons over .490 on base percentage, and 3 of them over .500. 3 seasons he was on base more than 50 times, 50% of his time, which is
absolutely unreal. Like 300 is good, right? 500's insane. And there's a lot of hitting skill that goes into taking a walk. You don't just stand there and hope that the pitcher throws 4 pitches out of the strike zone.
No.
It's like when he gets the ones in there, you make contact with it and you foul it off, which lets you keep going. There's a lot of, you're not swinging at bad pitches. There's a lot of like skill, like hitting skill that goes into taking a walk. And Ted Williams had it. I remember reading a thing about him once, and somebody was talking to him about hitting, and they're like, "What's your secret to hitting?" He's like, when the pitcher throws it, I just kind of look at the rotation. So if you look at the rotation of the spin coming out of the pitcher's hand, you know what kind of pitch it is, so you know where to swing. And the guys he was talking to was like, "Dude, Ted, nobody can see that." Nobody can see that ball, this rotation of the ball. What are you talking about?
But there's something interesting about this because of Williams' vision. From things that I've read, so I have no reason to dispute this, but it's been written many times. Ted Williams had 2010 vision. And now if you wonder now everybody knows what 2020 vision is. We say, oh, that's your great, standard perfect vision. We say 2020 is great. 2010 basically means you have a 10-foot advantage. So what's clear for Ted Williams 20 feet away will not be clear for someone with 20/20 eyesight until they move 10 feet closer. So someone with 20/10 eyesight, like Ted Williams, can read the smallest line on the eye chart. You see objects 20 feet away as clearly as others see objects 10 feet away. Now, I actually looked this up the other day. There was a rumor of an Aboriginal who had 25 eyesight, but most researchers apparently believe that level of vision is impossible among humans. And I believe that means even correctable to that level. So that explains why, 1, he was a great fighter pilot, and 2, he could really hit a baseball. And this, of course, led to 1941, which you could call his magnum opus, when he became the last major leaguer to top 400 for a season. That's 2 hits out of every 5 at-bats, which is just staggering.
It's a good day. Like if you performed that in baseball, you'd be like, oh, that was a great day. I had 2 hits today. Like, that's awesome.
Yeah, everybody would think you were great. And you do that for a whole year. Now, the last game of the season, going into the last game of the season, his batting average was .399.6, which would round up to 400. So he would be credited with a 400 season. But Ted Williams is a badass, so he didn't want to sit the day out, even though his manager said, you can sit out this doubleheader because we're not going to make the postseason anyway. So he played, and he got 6 hits in 8 at-bats to finish the season with a .406 batting average. And that was the year he had a .553, I think it was .553 on-base percentage, which was the all-time record at the time, which Barry Bonds and some steroids broke 20-something years ago.
Right. And that season, the 1941 Ted Williams season is just obscene for statistical, like 400 was a thing that people were maybe hitting in like the old days, like the Ty Cobb days. Nobody has hit it since then, and it's been 80 years.
Well, I did a look because, being a baseball historian and all, I did a look through all 400 baseball seasons ever, and it looked at the years. And except for Ted Williams in 1941, there's always at least one mitigating circumstance. And like there was a new rule change or something, or they introduced the cork ball, or they lowered the seams on the ball, or they banned trick pitches or something like that. There was always something that had happened that year or the year or two before that, except for 1941. And since the regular sacrifice fly, what we assume, to anybody who doesn't play baseball, if you hit a long ball in the air and someone catches it, you're out, right? But if you hit a long fly ball in the air and someone catches it, but a run manages to score from, say, third base or something in spite of it, now it's credited as a sacrifice fly. So you're not credited with a hit, but you're also not credited with an at-bat. That rule was not in place then. So Ted Williams actually lost like 5 or 6 hits that he would have had. The average would have been higher than 406 in 1941 because there was not the modern rule then. So, which I think is pretty impressive.
And not to mention, of those 400 seasons, Ted Williams in 1941, he hits 37 home runs. Yeah. So he's got like the power, like a lot of times it's kind of a different swing if you're swinging for power versus swinging to get on base, and for him to have that level of power and still hit 400, that is really impressive.
What's interesting about Williams was the only people who've combined power and average like that, really for a career in history, are Babe Ruth, whom even if you don't know baseball, you probably heard the name Babe Ruth, Ted Williams, and Rogers Hornsby. But Hornsby and Williams did it differently. Like I mentioned the Triple Crown, right? When you lead the league in home runs batted in, and batting average. There have been like 18 home runs in Major League history. And Ted Williams has 2 of them. But Ted Williams also did something nobody else in history did. He began playing in 1939. He retired in 1960. He has a career Triple Crown. If you look up he has a career Triple Crown. In those years of his career, he has more home runs, more runs batted in, and the highest batting average for that entire career period. And I don't think there's anyone else in Major League history that can say that. Certainly not Ruth or Hornsby or Cobb or Bonds or any of those guys. So a career Triple Crown.
Being good.
Yeah. And even when he was 38 years old, when he won his 5th batting title, he nearly hit 400 again. He hit 388. And this was a guy who was slowed to the point that he was not able to, if you hit a weak ball and you can run fast enough to beat out the throw to first base, right? He had no infield singles that year, and he still hit 388. So, a stunning guy.
And I guess we should stipulate that he had no infield singles because he was like, his knees and ankles and legs were shot because he was literally in a war, 2 wars.
He was shot down in a war, which we'll get to.
He was shot down in a war. And so I guess we should maybe get into that. So he has this 400 season. He doesn't earn MVP that year. It goes to DiMaggio because that's the same year he had the big hit streak.
Yeah, but, I know a lot of people find that controversial. I'm not going to weigh in. I always thought when I was younger that Williams was robbed, but especially when I was doing the research for the Sluggers of the 1940s episodes, its most valuable player, DiMaggio, who is an insanely good fielder, better fielder than Ted Williams. DiMaggio, before he started his 56-game hitting streak, and by the way, the second longest hitting streak is 44 games, so this is a big deal. The Yankees, who DiMaggio played for, were way down in 4th place. And when it finished, they were way ahead in 1st place. And it galvanized the team and it galvanized the nation. And so you can argue that DiMaggio was more valuable to his team that won the World Series that year than Williams was to his team that didn't make the World Series. But oddly enough, during Joe DiMaggio's 56-game hitting streak, he hit 411, which was 5 points more than Williams hit for the entire season. Now, Williams
you had kind of said something, we were talking about this before, and you'd mentioned that one of the reasons that Williams doesn't, maybe didn't win is because Ted Williams, we haven't talked too much about his personality, but he didn't really make a lot of friends with sports media people. He was kind of that like, hey, wait till you see Jimmy Fox hit. No, wait till you see me hit. He kind of took that attitude in. He was going to beat every pitcher that he went up against. He was going to be the best and he was going to prove it. and he kind of rubbed some sports writers the wrong way, which
this is
might
true.
have affected his.
It affected that to the point that I've read because he was a very close second in the 1941 most valuable player race, and I've read that one sports writer who didn't like Ted left him entirely off his ballot, which he wouldn't get any of the partial points, which would have meant the loss. And if that's the case, then that's just evil. That's just sour grapes. The thing is,
Classic Baseball Writers Association of America.
Williams was really popular with all the other players, and he was actually popular with the officials. He never argued a ball and strike call, and he was never thrown out of a game once, which is pretty impressive in a career that long. But with the press, the thing is, you got to think back then, you didn't have TV or, ESPN things and MLB TV, where you can watch the players every day and you can see them being interviewed every day and make your own opinions. You had the newspapers and maybe some radio, but the newspapers was where you read about your stars. And each team had sports writers traveling with them to do things. And if you got on the wrong side of one of the sports writers, or if you didn't do what they wanted or give stories that they wanted and stuff, you would get poorly written about. And that's all people would read. There were no second opinions. It wasn't until the 1960s when you really began to see your heroes on TV every day, when you could make your own opinion about their personality. In the 1940s, you had to take it from the sports writers. And Ted, while he was a bit cocky, it wasn't just pure ego. He had, at the beginning of his career, there was a real honeymoon with the press, but taking on Ted, writing critical stories about Ted, this brash young star, sold newspapers. And some guys, Dave Egan, Austin Lake, they would provoke stories where stories didn't exist. And he was easy to mock because this guy was so focused on hitting that when he was out playing in the outfield between batters, he would take imaginary swings to look, he would be practicing hitting still when he was playing in the outfield. And he once, one of the main older press corps guys, Bill Cunningham, Ted refused an interview with him because it was obvious Cunningham had been drinking, and Ted was like, "No, I'm not going to do that." So some of the writers had it in for Ted, and that was how it was.
Yeah, he just took it very seriously. He had an interesting relationship with the Boston fans. So he played in Boston for 19 years, but he never once tipped his cap to the crowd. A lot of times, like, if you have a really good game, big hit, like you get up, the crowd cheers for you, you tip your cap to them. But he was just like, "No, I'm just doing my job. This is my thing. I'm going to do it."
Well, the thing he hated fair weather fans. People that would be, they loved him one day and then he'd go 0 for 4 the next day and he'd get booed. And he like, no, not for me. So
he was obsessed with hitting too. Like he basically invented the strike chart or the hitting chart, that you see nowadays. They do it for everybody, the little heat map of where they like the ball and stuff. But he was doing that with he didn't have StatCast. He was doing that with a pencil and paper.
But his book, The Science of Hitting, that's still a great book today. Anybody that wants to actually, I read it, last time I read it was 3 or 4 years ago. And even on the cover, it's got like the chart and stuff. And he was, even those little things like being, well, we'll get to his career later. We're at 1941. So 1942, Ted Williams wins his first of 2 Triple Crowns and again does not win the Most Valuable Player award. Now, this time I do actually kind of feel he was wrong because Joe Gordon was great. A great player with the Yankees, second baseman. Gordon, but okay. But that's me. That's me, what I feel. But then, remember, 1942, at this time, Pearl Harbor has happened. A lot of baseball players are enlisting and going to war. Now, Ted's parents were divorced, and he was the sole supporter of his mother. So he was exempt from service. He did play the entire 1942 season, and he did it so he could pay off an annuity that he bought for his mother. But on May 22nd, he signed up for the U.S. Navy's V5 program to train as a naval aviator. Can I say a few words about the Navy's V5 program?
Yes, but before you do, let's take a quick ad break. And when we come back, we'll get more in depth into Ted Williams' time in the military. We'll be right back. Okay, we're back. And Indy, you were just about to tell us more about Ted's time with the Navy V5 program.
Well, because again, me doing all the military history stuff, I might as well throw this stuff in as well. This program.
So that's our primary focus on the show. Usually is trying to do military history kind of stuff. So like, that's a huge component to Ted's story. We have to understand.
And that's why I'm famous as a military historian. So great. Here we are.
Yes, let's do it.
The V5 program trains civilians as aviation cadets. It was established under the Naval Aviation Cadet Act in 1935, which set up the Volunteer Naval Reserve Class V5. And this was 18 months of training. And very importantly, you were not allowed to get married during that time. Now, if you were selected, as Ted Williams was, you went to the Naval Flight Preparatory School for physical and military training. Well, obviously, naval customs and etiquette. You needed some math and physics, and their practical applications went in flight. And then there was a preliminary flight module, which was I don't know how many hours, some hours in a simulator, and then a test flight with an instructor. Then after that, if you were any good, you went to flight training at Pensacola, Florida, at the naval base there, and then advanced flight training somewhere else. Now, in Williams' case, that somewhere else was the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, where his gang was called the Cloudbusters. Everybody had a nickname. And other Cloudbusters personnel there included future presidents Gerald Ford and George Bush. Now, Williams set a bunch of gunnery records there, which I think may have been something to do with his 2010 vision. I've never met anyone that said they had 2010 vision, so it must be that rare. But he was really good at flying planes. So he was in the Naval Reserve, and then he got his Marine Corps commission and his wings May the 2nd, 1944. And that day, because he couldn't before, that day he married Doris, his first of 3 wives, and Lieutenant Theodore Samuel Williams finished the war at Pearl Harbor, not having seen combat. He spent his service mainly training pilots as a pilot trainer, and he was discharged from active duty on January 28, 1946, right? So not a particularly badass service record in World War II. But
except he's training like the whole next generation of Marine Corps aviators, which is kind of cool. And he's setting all these gunnery records because it turns out that maybe hitting a baseball does have some like skill crossover with flying a fighter plane, right? The quick twitch muscle reflex, the steady hands, the good eyesight. There's a lot of...
And seeing things before other people see them, that's going to do. Do you play baseball? You ever played when you were a kid?
Yeah, I did. I mean, I play beer league slow pitch softball now, but I did play baseball.
I play, even at the tender age of 58, I play with a Division I team here in Stockholm. The Elite Series is the highest division. I mean, obviously, this is nothing to do like American minor leagues and stuff. The Elite Series is actually a really fast company, and a lot of our guys are pretty good. I'm not very fast anymore. I'm an outfielder, and my eyes aren't that good long distance, but I can still hit, so I can still play. So I'm mostly a DH, a designated hitter. For those of you out there, instead of the pitcher, the guy that throws the balls, you could have a designated hitter because most pitchers can't hit. So it helps the offense in the game. It's still fun to play.
Yeah, I love it. It's like, it's a highlight of my week. Here's my games.
Yeah, it's a big part of my summer. But anyhow, back to Ted Williams. So he comes back to baseball, 1946, right? 1946, he does not lead the league in any of the Triple Crown stats. He does not lead the league in homers or RBIs or batting average, but he wins his first Most Valuable Player award, mainly because the Red Sox won the pennant, and they lost the World Series in 7 games in best of 7. So it came down to the final game when Hall of Famer Enos Slaughter did this mad dash from first base to beat the Red Sox. So there's Williams with his first MVP. I will say that Ted Williams, he won 2 MVPs in his career. He finished second 4 times. So
right.
That's
including his rookie season.
And now every single year of his entire career, he got some MVP votes. Okay, 1952, he played 6 games, so he didn't get any. But in 1953, he only appeared in 37 games when he came back from Korea, but he hit 407 in those 37 games. So he still got MVP votes. He still had votes in the voting. Like he finished like 26 or something. So that'll show you what the press thought of him in spite of the press not liking him.
Right. So he gets into baseball and he's doing really well. He's, just a generational talent, just unbelievable hitter. He's doing it through yes, he's got 2010 eyesight, but he puts a lot of hard work into doing this, right? That's all he thinks about. He was obsessed with it.
He spent like 6 hours a day in the batting cages and stuff. He would go there, if there was a 5 o'clock game or something, he'd go at 9 a.m. and spend 4 or 5 hours in the batting cage, just hitting baseballs, hitting curveballs, working. Because having a generational talent is one thing, honing it into something to be the best in the generation is another. And that's what a badass does. Okay, so he's great. He is 2 MVPs, batting titles and everything. But then in January 9th, 1952, he is called from the inactive reserve list. He hasn't flown a plane since 1945, but he called this during the Korean War. And he passed his physical. On May the 2nd, he was recalled to active duty as a Marine Corps. And something very, very important about this, since I'm doing the Korean War now. In 1951, when the United States really started having to use conscription or to call up reserves to refill the ranks because the casualties were mounting, they did something. The military and the government decided on something that, looking back, was a really bad idea because it really damaged their standing, and it made a lot of people really angry at the military and at the war. There were a lot of active reserve units, like National Guard units, which they could have sent over to Korea as a unit, but they didn't do that. What they did instead was calling back to service piecemeal, like individuals, men who'd been out of uniform since 1945. And the reason for this is Korea was what it was, but there was a much larger fear of a larger war with the Soviet Union or with China, particularly during when Douglas MacArthur was actively wanting to expand the war to China. And those units, those active service units like National Guard units, the ones that actually trained, because Ted wasn't training. He hadn't done any training since 1945. The ones that actually trained, they were being saved. They were kept in reserve for this larger war should it turn up. So guys like Williams, thousands and thousands of them, were activated, and they had civilian lives. I mean, he was 34. He had a young daughter named Bobby Joe, but I think it was short for Barbara Joyce. He'd been out of uniform for 7 years. He hadn't done anything but play baseball, so he's still in good shape because he trained all the time. But he got sent back to Korea instead of people that were actively training at the time. So there was a huge mood in the United States. This was very unfair, and they're absolutely right. But of course, the Truman administration and Omar Bradley and the Joint Chiefs and stuff were looking at the bigger picture that they needed to keep these units in reserve in case of a war with the Soviet Union. So Ted was not happy to be called back to service, although he didn't complain about it. But this time he requested jet training, which he got on the F-9F Panther jet. And he was assigned to Marine Corps Squadron VMF 311, which flew dive bombing missions and, ground attack missions. And Captain Williams, he flew on either 37 or 39 missions, depending which source you believe, because they're pretty much split 50-50 on he flew 37 or 39. However, and here's where he starts.
It's still a lot. It's still 30 plus combat missions, right? And these are low altitude, skimming the jungle, like, attacking into anti-aircraft fire. And, there's MiGs, there's anti-aircraft fire. We were worried about war with the Russians and the Chinese, but the Russians and the Chinese there is a Russian and Chinese presence in North Korea at this time. Yeah. So he's fighting the top of the line equipment in a jet fighter. And 5 years, 5 months earlier, he was hitting baseballs.
Well, the F-9F, I'll say a few words about the F-9F, because why not? The Panther jet. Because remember, he hadn't flown a jet before. The Grumman F-9F Panther was Grumman's first jet. It was the first jet-powered fighter that saw air-to-air combat with the U.S. Navy. It was being developed already in World War II. It had its maiden flight in 1947. And the Navy and the Marines used it extensively in Korea. The Army, the Air Force, not so much, but the Navy and Marines. Now, Williams flew his missions from a base in South Korea, but the Panthers, they were really good carrier-based planes. That was their thing. On July 3rd, 1950, just a week after the Korean War began, and F-9F-3 scored the U.S. Navy's first aerial victory of the Korean War. And it was the jet fighter the Navy used the most often, with nearly 80,000 sorties flown. pilots liked it because, fun fact, the cockpit was air conditioned, which most of them were. Now, as things developed and other jet planes appeared on both sides, MiGs and stuff, for example, the Panthers were relatively slow, especially compared with like the F-86 Sabres, which were more maneuverable. They could really accelerate and they were more maneuverable. So the Sabres would be used to patrol the Manchurian border to keep the sky safe. And the Panthers, they'd be given the ground attack missions. And this is risky since, as you said, the AA got better and better. And that's actually what happened to Ted. On his third mission, the Panther he flew was hit and he crash landed and he survived. And the plane was a total write-off. But the next day at 8 a.m., Ted Williams was off on mission number 4 already, which is pretty badass. And he also, he served as wingman to future astronaut John Glenn, the first astronaut to orbit the Earth. And Glenn, I got a quote here for you, okay? Everybody ready? It's quote time. Glenn had this to say about Williams and his crash. Ted flew as my wingman on about half the missions he flew in Korea. During his crash, he was on fire and had to belly land the plane in. He slid it in on the belly. It came up the runway about 1,500 feet before he was able to jump out and run off the wingtip. Much as I appreciate baseball, Ted to me will always be a Marine fighter pilot. Imagine that, boy. Yeah. I mean, professional athlete, but still.
He sprains his ankle doing that run because the plane is like going to explode. He's shot up by anti-aircraft fire. The landing gear, and at the time they're like, just bail out, just eject, right? And he's worried that ejecting might cause an injury to him. He's also not that excited about ejecting over North Korea. He's like, I'll get back to a friendly airstrip and I'm going to try to land this thing. And his radio's out. So like Glenn is like gesturing through the cockpit at him, like, get jacked, like get out. And he's like, no, I think I can land this. And so, on fire, smoke, it wheels up, hits the ground, like belly landing, like no landing gear. Right. And that's, I mean, that is,
I don't know. I might take my chances in North Korea.
That's dangerous, right? It's his third mission. It's a combat mission. He's a celebrity. He's like the one of the most famous baseball players in the world at this time.
And remember, this is when baseball is the biggest sport in the United States at this time. It is.
Right.
It is. I mean, there's still horse racing and boxing and racing coming up, but football, they're nothing compared to Major League Baseball, particularly in the late 40s and early 50s before the rise of TV started keeping people from the parks and, blah-de-da. Well, that's a talk for another day. But he ended up, the thing that actually kept him away from further service was a series of ear infections. You can't fly with the ear infections because your balance is all messed up. So in 1953, he's mustered out. I wrote down the awards he won, his decorations, so I wouldn't forget. The Air Medal with 2 gold stars, the Presidential Unit Citation, the Korean Service Medal, and the United Nations Service Medal. So, right. By the way, John Glenn was not the only future astronaut who flew F-9F in Korea. Neil Armstrong flew them as well.
Yeah, that's right. So, wow. I mean, and that's wild, like to have, because you'll see, it wasn't that weird for celebrities to join the military in times of war, like World War II, Korea. You'll have celebrities join and they'll give them some, you can travel around and do war bonds, that kind of thing. Like they offered Ted Williams a couple different times. You don't have to go out there and like fight. You don't have to go out there and get shot at. Like we'll give you something good to do because the Army doesn't really want it, or the Air Force doesn't really want it on their heads that like, we got Ted Williams blown up. But he declined every time. He's like, no, the same thing as like you can sit and take 3.3996 and round it up to 400. Yeah. And he's just like, no, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do it for real. So crazy stuff.
And he comes back and resumes his career, and he's got injuries and leg can't run and stuff, but he can still hit, still wins another couple batting titles.
His second at bat after he comes back from getting shot down in the war, and he goes back, like you said, flies 33 to 36 more combat missions after getting shot down. Comes back to Fenway Park, and in his second at bat, he hits like a 400 something foot home run. Apparently, like I read a sports story about that, and they were like, it was deafening when he hit that. This is
the story of the 535 foot home run. I'm glad you mentioned that. I hadn't thought about this. When I was thinking, prepare things about Ted Williams, forgot about this. There's a seat up in Fenway Park, 535 feet from the plate, that Ted Williams hit with a baseball. It's been painted to, and this is not like one of the legends from like 1910. Oh, he once hit a ball 535 feet. We know how far the distance is because people were there, and the seat was destroyed by it.
Right. They put a new seat in. It's like the Fenway Park, the bleachers are all green seats. Yeah. But that one seat that he broke with a baseball, they replaced it with a red seat. So no matter where you are, if the park is empty, you can see that one spot and where he hit the ball.
Now, no one's hit a ball that far, as far as I'm aware, since Mickey Mantle retired. Mickey Mantle and Babe Ruth and Josh Gibson hit balls further, or that far or further. Thing is, those guys were really big, strong guys. Ted was 6'2", sure, but he wasn't a big, muscly guy. It was pure mechanics. It was just, you read the science of hitting, all his power comes from his hips. Mickey Mantle would swing with his shoulders and his upper body with that colossal strength. And Babe Ruth would just put everything into it with these massive all or nothing swings. Ted was doing these line drives, 535 feet. And some of the, again, some of you non-baseball guys won't know the players, but like some of the Red Sox stars the last 20, 25 years, like David Ortiz and stuff, guys that can lead the league in homers, can hit 40, 45 homers in a year. They'll come and look at that seat and stand and look at the plate. They'll be like, how is it possible for a human being to hit a baseball this far? But that was Teddy Ballgame, or the kid, as he called himself too. Oh, want to hear a couple funny little side anecdotes about him? Ted, he marched to the beat of his own drummer. And when Joe McCarthy took over managing the Red Sox in 1948, McCarthy was a stickler McCarthy had been the Yankees manager during their heyday in the 30s and early 40s. And he was a stickler for looking good. You wore a tie. You dressed well. You didn't drink in public. And people were like, well, Williams hated wearing ties. He'd wear like a sports shirt and a sports jacket. That was it. And they're thinking, well, how is this gonna sit, between Dickler McCarthy and free spirit-ish Ted Williams? At their first meeting, where there were reporters covering it, McCarthy's not wearing a tie. He's just wearing a sports shirt. And they asked him afterwards, they're like, well, what's the deal? Does Ted not have to wear a tie? And McCarthy said, look, any manager who cannot get along with a 400 hitter does not deserve to be managing. So that was it. Now, Williams also used to, when he was single before the war, he signed a lot of autographs, being super famous Ted Williams. If it was a very pretty girl, his autograph would include his room number, the hotel.
Nice. Classic.
Yeah. I think that's pretty funny, actually.
That's pretty funny,
But okay, so he retires in 1960. His last at-bat, he's already announced it's going to be his last game. In his last at-bat, he hits a home run, the 521st of his career. He retires with a .344 lifetime batting average, which no one since World War II has become particularly close to. Tony Gwynn, Stan Musial, sure, but that's still 15 points away. And combining power and average like that's something that, it's something that just doesn't exist. It doesn't exist. I don't know how he'd hit today. He would probably still spend 6 hours, in the batting cage every day, 6 or 7 days a week before the game. But he, and post major league career, he did some managing, but that's particularly important to our story.
He got manager of the year. He came back. He took over a bad team, and he turned him around for a season. Got manager of the year.
He did one thing with Frank Howard there. Oh, here's another. If you want to look up, if you want to see another good image, look up Frank Howard, Washington Senators. There were Frank Howard, Washington Senators, and look at a gigantic baseball player from the 60s. And since he played for Washington, he was known as either the Washington Monument or the Capital Punisher. Those were his two nicknames. Frank Howard was hitting 40 homers a year, but was only walking, maybe getting, the free base on balls 70, 80 times. When Williams took over as a manager, he's like, there is no reason a guy hitting 40 home runs a year should not be walking 100 times a year. And he completely turned him around and made him a near MVP threat for 3 straight years before Howard's injury. So I guess his managing career is pretty badass as well. But I was going to mention a couple of things before. Yeah. Oh, just seeing how we are on time. Now, even during his career, he was the spokesman for the Jimmy Fund, which is a cancer fund in Boston. Okay. This is Dr. Sidney Farber's Children's Cancer Fund, which was established in the late 40s. And Ted appeared on behalf of them. And Dr. Farber is actually known as the father of chemotherapy. And even before they first, Ted was still their spokesman before they first achieved remission in leukemia. And today, from what I understand, over 85% of children with leukemia are cured. And the fund, the Jimmy Fund, was established to benefit the Dana-Farber Cancer Institute. And fun fact, a lot of fun facts today. The name Jimmy Fund is because it was named after a patient, but they didn't want to give his real name because they wanted to conceal his identity, so they called him Jimmy. But his real name, as it came out decades later, was Einar Gustafsson. So the Einar Gustafsson Fund is what it would be if it wasn't the Jimmy Fund. And you and I talked beforehand, we mentioned his wildlife preservation.
Yes.
For a while, he lived on the Miramichi River, if I'm pronouncing that right, in New Brunswick, where he fished. He loved fishing. He was a big fisherman all his life. And he fished Atlantic salmon. And it was a fish that he admired enough that he became a leader of the fight to preserve the Atlantic salmon from overfishing and whatever other encroachments on its habitat that there are. So there is an annual Ted Williams Award presented to other people that have joined this course. And I did not know that until just recently when I was doing a little preparation for this. I could talk about Ted Williams for a couple hours, but that is something that you knew that I didn't know, that when we were talking beforehand.
Yeah, he's in the Fishing Hall of Fame. They said he would catch he's caught like thousands of fish. He would release most of them. But yeah, he loved fishing. And so after he was done with baseball, he gets into fishing and becomes this kind of not just like an expert fisherman, like Hall of Fame level fisherman, but he also gets really involved in conservation efforts as well. So like that's just Ted Williams. He has this dedication, this like kind of perfectionist intensity that he brings to like. He brought it to his relationships with the press, but he also brought it to hitting. He brought it to being a Marine Corps pilot. He brought it to fishing. He brought it to like fighting for the Negro Leagues to get recognition in the Baseball Hall of Fame. He didn't do anything by half, you know.
No.
He just completely dedicated himself to whatever thing it was that he was going after.
Just imagine having that, not just that vision, but that level of vision goes with that level of hand-eye coordination. I mean, I no offense, but neither you nor I can imagine having that level.
No, not only do you see because it's easy to be like, oh, well, he could just see the ball better than everybody, but not really, because you still have to be able to get the bat around fast enough to hit that thing. And that is not, that's not an easy thing to do. The timing, the bat speed, and being able to put power behind it. Same thing with fighter pilot stuff, right? Like, just because you can see the target really well doesn't mean you can hit it.
No, he, Joe McCarthy, again, that manager that he had in 48 and 49 with the Red Sox. After Williams was hitting once, he walked back to the dugout during batting practice, and Joe McCarthy said, if I could hit like that, I wouldn't even take a salary. Because I love that Teddy Ballgame loved to hit. That was his thing. He loved, if anybody out there has a passion for something like that, then you are one of the unique and one of the good ones. Especially a passion like that, people make fun of professional sports and might say people don't like sports. It's a waste of time, or especially they feel like whatever hooliganism and things like that, and they don't understand it. But it is such a community bonding thing for so much of the world. And to have a hero like that, to have a Ted Williams that stands head and shoulders above literally everyone, a career Triple Crown, and then goes and becomes a trainer of pilots, and then goes and becomes a war hero serving with astronauts. And then goes and stands up for the rights of people that were not really able to stand up for their own rights before. That's pretty badass.
That's pretty badass. And his OPS was over 1,000 for every season of his 19-year career, except for his age 40 season.
Yeah, but that was he also had the injuries there. So.
Right, yeah.
And his OPS plus was still over 100, and that's league average.
Right. He got MVP votes that year.
Oh, yeah. He did. He still did. The Ted Williams Foundation has this to say about Teddy Ballgame, the Splendid Splinter, the kid, right? Which is, I suppose, a good way to end to talk about Ted Williams. Ted Williams' military service is a reminder that greatness goes beyond statistics and awards. His willingness to put his dreams on hold for a greater cause, coupled with his exemplary performance in the face of danger, makes him a shining example of valor and selflessness, qualities that continue to inspire generations to this day.
Yeah. Wow. That's powerful. And, just this guy getting out there and doing what he was able to do is just, unreal, like athletic ability, but also just being, there's times where you'll go in and do one of these episodes and you find out that they the more you start to research the character, they're like, oh, they did all this badass stuff, but they were kind of like a pain. Like they weren't really that nice of a person to talk to or hang out with.
Well, everybody he played with liked him. All of the players, it was not just, and having said that, as a bizarre side note for everybody out there, it's possible that in 50 or 100 years, we might get to see Ted Williams again because 2 of his kids had him cryogenically frozen when he died in 2002. So if there's ever a day, it's so cool if Ted Williams could, he'd be quite old. He was like 80 then. He wouldn't be like, maybe clone a Ted Williams. But that's just speculation. I could see it as a Ted Williams. So that's pretty much all I got to say today about Teddy Ballgame and his career Triple Crown and 5 years in his prime. I mean, the numbers he could have put up had he not gone to war twice, not once, but twice. And the second time, pretty unfairly of the U.S. government for sending individuals into units that they have no connection with when they could have sent active units, although you can understand the paranoia about a war with Russia or war with the Soviet Union. But still, 10 points to Teddy Ballgame.
Right. He loses his age 24, 25, and 26 season, and like his age 33, 34. Like those are prime years for baseball players.
If you look at his home runs and RBIs before and after those years, you're looking at another 200 home runs, in which case he would have been the career leader of home runs. I mean, no, maybe he would have played 1943 and had a career-ending injury. You can't say about a what if, right?
Sure.
Just numbers like that. I mean, he nearly won a 3rd Triple Crown. By one hit, he missed a 3rd Triple Crown in 1949. No one's ever won 3 Triple Crowns. On the last day of the season, he came up 1 hit short to lose the batting title. But so.
That's Ted Williams. Okay, Indy Neidell, thank you so much for coming on and telling this story. Where can people find you online?
Well, the World War II channel is still active. The war itself ended last September, the week-by-week coverage, but we've been doing still chronology-based mini-series. We did 10 days in Sudan about the breakthrough, and so I'm there. Doing a North Africa series now that's a week-by-week, I think it's 9 episodes. Although I shouldn't say that because we haven't announced how many it is. Okay. of the beginning of Rommel in Africa. We have a couple more of those coming up. And that's if you just go to YouTube and look up World War II. That's the name of the channel. The Korean War thing is is the Korean War with Indy Neidell. And we're only, I think, 70 episodes in, and they're usually 20 minutes long or so. This is video stuff. So you can see all that. Sabaton History, which you said you're a fan of, that's on hold at the moment, though Sabaton has a new album that comes out now, today or around now. So in the spring, we'll be doing some more Sabaton History episodes that you can also see on YouTube. Pardon?
I said, oh, nice. I didn't know.
Yeah. And the Baseball History Podcast, which has a lot of sidetracks and a lot of really fun stories about a lot of weird stuff from baseball history, even going back to the 1870s and 1880s. That is called Indy Neidell's Baseball History Time Machine. And that's at Apple Podcasts and Spotify or wherever you. So, yeah.
All right. Okay. Well, Indy, thank you so much for talking with us today. It's great to have you on the show, and I really hope that we get to have you come back in the future for something else.
Yeah, that'd be great. There's plenty of wars out there.
Oh, yeah.
Cover them all.
Yes, that's
okay.
right.
Thanks, everybody.
Okay. Yeah, thank you guys so much for listening, and we'll see you next week with another Badass. Until then, stay badass. Badass of the Week is produced by High Five Content and $7 Productions. Executive producers are Dwayne Johnson, Danny Garcia, Andrew Jacobs, Hiram Garcia, Brian Gewirtz, Frankie Chaparino, and of course, me, Ben Thompson. Writing is by me and my semi-regular but always awesome co-host, Dr. Patricia Larish. Story editing by Ian Jacobs. Our mixing, music, and sound design is done by the incomparable Jude Brewer. Production support by Jean McGale-Waite. Badass of the Week is based on my website, badassoftheweek.com, where you can read all sorts of stories about other badasses. If you want to reach out with questions or ideas, you can email us at badasspodcast@badassoftheweek.com. If you like this podcast, please subscribe, follow, listen, tell your friends, and tell your enemies. And please leave us a review. If you want to support Badass of the Week, please check out our Patreon page. We'll be back next week with another one.